So Bad It's Good is sponsored by our friends at Hims. Hair loss isn't just about hair. It's about how you feel when you look in the mirror. Hims helps you take back that confidence with access to simple, personalized care that fits your life. For simple online access to personalized and affordable care for hair loss, ED, weight loss, and more, visit hims.com/sobad. That's hims.com/sobad for your free online visit. hims.com/sobad. Individual results may vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil and finasteride. Featured products included compounded drug products, which the FDA does not approve or verify for safety, effectiveness, or quality. Prescription required. See website for full details, restrictions, and important safety information. Folks, welcome back to So Bad It's Good. If you've been listening to the show, always I have been in love with films. Ever since I was a kid, growing up in Olathe, Kansas, they have meant the world to me. But what's so great about podcasting is that you can dive into somebody else's podcast and they can make you kind of reappreciate or reignite your passion for film. We talk a lot about reality TV, and yes, I think that is some of the most horrific things committed to any sort of celluloid, even though that's not really film. But these folks are going to help me dive into spooky season. Some of the best and maybe least great, least great, that's not a word, horror films. They have this excellent podcast called Raiders of the Lost Podcast. It was a pleasure to join their podcast celebrating the work of Paul Thomas Anderson, where we did an episode on Boogie Nights, but you can get your movie news from them. They do deep dives on specific films. They have amazing guests. Will Forte was a recent guest, but they are here with us today. Please welcome James and Anthony Deveney. How are you guys?
We're doing great. Thanks for having us on, pal.
I have to say, I went to Santa Monica and did your podcast, and I rewatched Boogie Nights just to talk about it. And it was a reminder of how much film is meant to me. And just for the audience out there, what does film mean to you guys, and how long have you been into? Was it ever since you were kids?
Oh, cinema. Anthony and I, we grew up in a big family, all boys, 6 boys total. We're the youngest. We're identical twins. And so movies were so big for us with our brothers because it was a way for our parents to be able to shut us up, put a movie on, play video games. So I think we had movies on always around the house. Plus our brothers were 80s kids. We were 90s kids. So we grew up watching movies we shouldn't have been watching great 80s action movies, horror movies. And so Anthony and I always loved film. We grew up in the 90s, early 2000s, where some of the best big blockbusters came out that we fell in love with. Like, I remember seeing Jurassic Park in theaters, Toy Story when it came out in theaters, Fellowship of the Ring. So I think we were spoiled, and it's a combination of this big family that all loved movies.
And what it means is, I think that there's multiple things that I look at in terms of how film means, and it's an entertainment value kind of aspect, absolutely, but also deeper meaning of this is the greatest art form, I think.
Yeah.
And the ancient storytelling of our past, of our ancestors, this is the culmination of that. And storytelling is our greatest way to communicate, I believe. And so film is the perfect version of that.
And you guys are filmmakers or aspiring filmmakers yourselves. And I was talking to you guys, and what I found fascinating was this kind of came to fruition over the pandemic, which I think most podcasts came to fruition over the pandemic. But you started putting up TikTok clips and stuff, right?
So basically, we were both working in production. We moved from Boston to LA to pursue filmmaking, and it takes a while to get that going. Obviously, lockdown happens. We're both working in production. We both lose some work, as well as we had some free time. I look at COVID, terrible time for a lot of people, but also a gold rush of opportunity. If you want to write a book or get in shape, or you finally have the time and space to do whatever you've always wanted to do. And Anthony and I were toying with the idea of starting a show, a podcast. They were starting to get popular. We didn't find any movie ones that we really resonated with. There was one that was talking shit about Gladiator one episode. We were like, fuck it, let's do it. We can do that. Was there's nothing that could be bad that can be said about Gladiator. That was the final nail in the coffin. Let's start a show. And I was playing around with TikTok. I needed a new creative outlet in 2018, 2019. I saw the potential there. It was about to boom. I was doing sketch comedy videos. Anthony was helping me, and he'd be like, what is TikTok? What am I doing? Why am I filming you doing this thing? But we saw the market shift of the power of video marketing for a show. And we were kind of ground zero for movie podcasts and podcasts in general on the platform for TikTok back in 2020 when we started.
And you had you dabbled in your own podcast for a little bit. So you had an understanding of the fundamentals of running a podcast, how to post it, how to record it, what goes into that. So we had a jump start because James already had experience.
But you were missing the secret sauce, which is you.
him in movies. Because Anthony and I, we would always just talk about movies always, and we're filmmakers, and so we love cinema, we love movie news, we like scour IMDb like so many people listening probably do, or watch interviews, and it's just like we'd be in the kitchen for a half hour talking about Inception. And it's like, why don't we just turn the goddamn camera on and do this for real?
And it's taken off. You guys have over like 1,000 episodes, which I mean, that's you're talking my language. So there's always something that people can go back in your catalog and just start with like a film or a person, a topic, and start from there. But I was listening to your movie news episode today, which is a quick 30-minute everything that you need to know. We are in October right now. I think this will probably get released next week, but we're coming off of a weekend where Taylor Swift, The Life of a Showgirl, took #1 at the box office with like $33 million, correct?
Yeah. 38.
Now, 38. Yeah. So, and this is just domestic. Foreign, I think the total goes 100 mil. And this is a music video, a lyric music video, and behind the scenes footage. I thought it was only 15 or 20 minutes, and then somebody corrected me today and said it's like an hour and a half. I love any chance just to get people back into theaters. Yeah. I don't care what the reason is, but it is interesting. On the heels of, you had the Smashing Machine release this week. Yeah. A24, Benny Safdie, The Rock, obviously. There's supposedly Oscar buzz. And then you're having the second weekend of One Battle After Another, which I finally got to see. Is there ever a disappointment in you of like people aren't seeing the right thing?
Well, the Taylor Swift thing is a very unique situation because what happened this weekend, because this wasn't announced until 2 weeks ago, and all the exhibitors, once Taylor says she wants to release a movie, every exhibitor is like, okay, we will give you every showtime we can. So what happens is it did take away showtimes from One Battle and Smashing Machine. I don't think Smashing Machine would have been a big hit, but it definitely would have made a little bit more than $6 million than it did, and One Battle would have made, I think, a better second weekend than $12 million. So there was a problem where showtimes that were supposed to go to Smashing Machine and One Battle, exhibitors gave it to Taylor Swift. So if you went to book tickets for One Battle, you have way less options than in its opening weekend, which was unfortunate. But also, like you said, it's nice getting people to the theaters. But this was a really strange, but out of nowhere situation.
But there were plenty of showtimes. Yes, you could still see both those movies. One Battle had a pretty good second weekend, 22 opening weekend domestic last week, and then it opens the second weekend 12. There's just not a bad drop.
So not even a 50% drop.
Yeah, that's excellent.
But I was hoping that initial week, I mean, like, listen, this is where the geek in me, where I'm like, I almost wish, I was watching fan edits of the One Battle After Another trailer. People were, putting other music to it. And I was like, ooh, if they had this in the trailer, that might have gotten more people into those seats the first weekend. And I don't know if you guys get frustrated in covering movies where, especially on TikTok or social media, people will say it bombed immediately after the first weekend and not giving any chance to have legs. And we come from an industry in film where The Godfather ran in theaters for a year and a half. Like Jaws, the first summer blockbuster, ran for close to 2 years. Do we give things a chance? Are things discoverable still in 2025?
It's because studios pull movies so quickly. I mean, even a movie that's still in theaters, like Weapons is still in theaters, 30 days later, it's available to rent online. So I think studios pulling their movies too soon and not giving that break to breathe, to let the movie play out and make as much money as possible in theaters, make it so exclusive you can only see it in theaters. And then remember, we used to wait like 8 months, 10 months, sometimes longer for the VHS to come out.
When it came out on Blockbuster, big ups on Spider-Man 3's at Blockbuster.
And yes, the studios lost a whole new distribution revenue stream from, we can kind of get like 30% of what we made from the box office in rentals. But now it's less special, where Superman's another great example. Superman's in theaters, one of the biggest movies of the year, and it's rentable.
And it's on HBO Max now. It's the #1 film on HBO Max.
And so I think they're more concerned about the window for how long people are engaging with it online and talking about it online versus the window of people potentially going to the theater to see it.
Yeah. I mean, it is interesting. It sometimes feels like this inflection point in theater going experience, just like when Napster came out and the music companies did not plan on streaming. They were kind of did not plan on this. And I think we're still watching studios catch up to the world of streaming in so many ways. Like this weekend, I didn't even realize on Paramount Plus, you had the Liam Neeson Naked Gun film. Like that was there. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's only been like a month and a half since it was released. Or to your point, you said Weapons crossed 150 million domestic, which is insanely good for how much that movie cost, but I can buy that on DVD right now.
Yeah.
right?
You rent it, yeah.
Yeah, you are like, I mean, like, but it's already
Ryan,
out
no
there.
one's buying DVDs anymore. I'm just kidding.
Shut up! Don't say that.
You buy 4K
Yeah.
UHDs all the
That's
time.
not a DVD.
Don't tell my
That's not a
fiance
DVD.
that.
They are making still making DVDs.
I know they
People
still
are totally buying. No, I will
Just
say.
kidding, just kidding.
I have a storage facility where most of my stuff still is from like moves, and I have
Betamax.
no. I mean, God, I have Laserdisc, but I do have a huge collection of DVDs. Where about 9 or 7 years ago, I was like, this was the stupidest investment at all, and now I feel like, oh, physical media, there's a chance that it's coming back.
It is coming back.
You know?
We're all about physical media now too.
I mean, but are we just geeks, or like how does that filter out?
It's all about quality. There's people who
I think it is geeks care about quality.
It's a combination because physical media is always superior in image quality, sound quality, the bit rate. So when you watch a movie on streaming, whether it's Netflix, Max, or Prime, or whatever, it's going through their system. They're changing the coding. They're changing the bit rate.
Changing the edit.
The edit, the coloring. So everything's being affected. They'll modify the contrast, highs and lows. So everything's modified, and also reducing quality because they have such a big library that they can't use lossless information. So they break it down and really crush the quality. And physical, especially 4K UHD, you are getting the closest thing possible to the movie theater projection of a film, and it keeps as high a bit rate as possible because that disc, there's a reason why 4Ks cost so much, because it's basically like you're paying for more memory. It's going to be about 50 gigs, that movie size on a 4K. A DVD is going to be like 2 or 3 gigs. Blu-ray is going to be 15, 20 gigs because that's HD. But so that disc is expensive because it's same thing as flash cards with higher memory. The more memory, the more it costs. So that's why.
You're the first person that's been able to explain that to me. I was just like, 4K, they say it's better. I guess I'll just trust everybody. Yeah. But you have to really kind of, you have to teach the audience again. You know, I remember the leap to DVD and then the leap to Blu-ray. And now we have this new thing, 4K, which is just supposed to be the pristine of pristine. Mm-hmm. But it's also a great revenue stream for people that are into physical media to have to repurchase everything, you know? And I think that's interesting if you can get people on board.
And 4K, especially when there's a remaster, it's really special because the filmmakers and the studios who are re-releasing this movie, whether it's Sorcerer that came out a couple months ago, re-released 4K UHD, they're going frame by frame and reinvigorating it single frame at a time to make sure it's the best quality version of what you saw in theaters. And also, like, there's something about physical media where we grew up going to Blockbuster. You know, movie theater is like the most magical place in the world to me. However, a close second was going to Blockbuster with our brothers, you browse the aisles, and we get there's a video store we go to in Eagle Rock, California, called Vidiots. We go there all the time. Yeah. You know, it's our local video store. We're very lucky. It's 2 miles from where we live, and we're able to go there and have a membership and take out 4K UHDs, take out DVDs, Blu-rays, and it's amazing. And that's part of the experience, I think, of cinema that's lost as well for the younger generation.
Well, there's community in that, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's like I was saying to you guys earlier that I was in a 2:00 showing of One Battle After Another, and it was sold out, and it was the most amazing way to watch a film. You know, a lot of people, we were all laughing at the same time. Yeah. We were all gasping at the same time, and it was great to have that communal experience, which I think really, you know, the pandemic scared us off from in so many ways. And then when we came back from that, it was all just, if you have a blockbuster, if you have a high quality horror film, those are the things that were going to get people in the seats and save that theater going experience, right? Now, spooky season, you talked about Blockbuster being like a second to film. I used to work at a Blockbuster, and, you know, going out to have to check they would have these drops for the films, and then you'd have people like, do you have Jurassic Park 2? And you have to run out and open the key. But there was something, when you got to go into a Blockbuster, there was something kind of romantic about it, even as a kid, because there was excitement in it of like, are they going to have the film I want? What am I going to discover? This takes me away from growing up in a place like Kansas or Arizona. And I feel like that same romanticism in a way with horror films, because my love of horror films started when I was a kid. Because for me, it was something that I had to convince my babysitter to let me watch. You know, like, so there was like,
so I had like Halloween.
Well, yeah, I had to put up plan. Yeah, and then he got stabbed. No, I mean, there was effort in it. You know, it's like, I know I want to see this. I know it's going to scare the shit out of me. But as a kid, I want to see that. And I think your love of horror is developed when you are a young person, when those things are a little more believable to a young mind than they are to an older mind, which I think today, that's why my favorite horror films are like Ari Aster films like Midsommar or Hereditary, as opposed to when I was a kid when it was like Nightmare on Elm Street. What do you guys think about horror?
Oh, well, my favorites are the old ones. So The Exorcist, Nightmare on Elm Street, Rosemary's Baby, Shining, Les Diaboliques. Those are my favorites. And I still think I always prefer the older horror classics still to this day. And I do love the modern horror ones, but those old ones are still my top 5.
But when you look at the history of horror, I think it's the most enticing genre to watch. It's for filmmakers right now, it's the easiest one to make because it's the highest probability of return on investment. Low budget horror is booming. You get a really good chance of making a profit on that kind of film. So those are the most greenlit. That's why we have so many great low budget independent horror movies, really cool ideas that are getting made right now. For me, horror, I always loved as a kid because like we said, we were exposed to horror movies at a young age. I mean, watching Chucky and stuff like that when we were little kids.
There was that other video store near the park, remember?
Yeah.
And it was like the mom and pop one, and they had all like the B horror movies. Then our brothers would take us there, and I remember looking through those shelves.
Terrifying me.
And it was like the scare, like
Hellraiser would. I didn't want to look at the Hellraiser cover.
I mean, I don't know if you guys remember Ghoulies, Witchboard.
Yeah.
There was like a string of really, 80s horror films.
Leprechaun.
Yeah, Leprechaun was insane. But so here are the big, the big kind of characters that define the genre. You got Michael Myers in Halloween, Jason Voorhees in Friday the 13th, Freddy Krueger, Nightmare on Elm Street, Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Chucky, Child's Play, Ghostface, I guess is more one of the recent ones in Child's Play. So Bad It's Good is sponsored by our friends at Hims. Hair loss isn't just about hair. It's about how you feel when you look in the mirror. Hims helps you take back that confidence with access to simple, personalized care that fits your life. Now I'm looking in the mirror, I'm starting to get a receding hairline. I'm seeing the hair and I'm not loving it sometimes. And that's where Hims comes into play, because Hims offers convenient access to a range of prescription hair loss treatments with ingredients that work, including chews, oral medications, serums, and sprays. Doctor-trusted, clinically proven ingredients like finasteride and minoxidil can stop further hair loss and regrow hair in as little as 3 to 6 months. You shouldn't have to go out of your way to feel like yourself. Hims brings expert care straight to you with 100% online access to personalized treatment plans that put your goals first. There's no hidden fees, no surprise costs, just real personalized care on your schedule. Think of Hims as your digital front door that gets you back to your old self with simple 100% online access to trusted treatments for real health concerns all in one place. For simple online access to personalized and affordable care for hair loss, ED, weight loss, and more, visit hims.com/sobad. That's hims.com/sobad for your free online visit. hims.com/sobad. Individual results may vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil and finasteride. Featured products included compounded drug products which the FDA does not approve or verify for safety, effectiveness, or quality. Prescription required. See website for full details, restrictions, and important safety information. Pinhead from the Hellraiser films, Candyman, obviously Candyman, Billy the Puppet from Saw. Who am I leaving out here?
I mean, you're leaving out. Are you just only talking about 80s?
Well, I'm just talking
slashers?
I'm just talking about kind of slasher or the big ones that are marketed.
Yeah, well, I mean, at the end of the day, the biggest ones still all time, I think, are Dracula, Invisible Man, Nosferatu, those characters from the past, because they've had so many interpretations, and Frankenstein's monster. But yeah, I love the 80s and specifically, but I think, that horror boomed in the 70s and 80s, and it had a little bit of a downtrend at the end of the 80s. 90s, it really comes back with slasher movies with Wes Craven, reviving with Scream, and all those movies in the 2000s. Saw was a huge one as well. But I think the last 10 years has been one of the most amazing times for horror in the history of cinema.
And why do you think that?
Because there's so many unique ideas getting made and so many high concept ideas, whether it's something social like Get Out, or we're going back to this really folklore horror with Robert Eggers films like The Witch and The Lighthouse. But there's so many unique filmmakers in the horror space, and it seems like the only genre right now where directors and filmmakers can be extremely creative with their visions. Sci-fi's kind of going away in a lot of ways, which I'm disappointed about.
Because sci-fi's more expensive to produce, right?
Yeah. But I mean, that bums me out. They still try. It's like superheroes have taken over the sci-fi genre a lot of ways, in my opinion. But horror, because people are craving it. And like, you can make a great horror movie for $5 million and people will distribute it and buy it, and then people will go see it.
Well, as filmmakers, then, does that give you pause for like, well, we got to get into the horror game?
Oh, for sure.
But also, you still make sure it's a great idea. But there's an element of, I think audiences in the last, James has a great point, audiences in the last 10 years have gravitated towards the fantastical stories. And supernatural horror is fantasy, not like Lord of the Rings fantasy, but in a way it's a fantasy escapism kind of genre, which is why I think audiences are gravitating to horror. People aren't seeing crime films anymore. I'm wearing a shirt for Heat. People aren't seeing those kinds of movies anymore. A couple of crime films came out this year and bombed. They're not
Caught Stealing bombed. That's an awesome crime.
Yeah, which is what's his name? The director,
Aronofsky.
Yeah, Aronofsky.
Great film.
Amazing
that's
director.
a perfect example. 100%. So audiences, when they're going to see a movie, generally they're looking to see something that's out of the realm of reality, as a way of, I think it's more escapist. Because I think nowadays, because we were talking about like, we wish One Battle made more money. One Battle. But then you look at Weapons and Sinners, really successful horror films that are original ideas, but they're fantastical. They have the fantasy element of, spoilers, Weapons with the witch element, and then Sinners with the vampire element. So there's this idea that I have, that fantasy and taking away reality and giving audiences something that doesn't exist allows them to escape better, because they don't. Audiences are going to see films to escape more than going to see films for artistic integrity. Like back in the day when The French Connection was made $400 million, that would never happen now, because the audience has changed and the idea of what movies are has changed.
Yeah.
And so that's why horror is booming. And I think it's really that it allows for pure escapism.
Yeah. Well, I mean, speaking to your point about Sinners and Weapons, which I guess would be considered horror or in the horror genre, correct?
Yeah.
So to me, One Battle After Another, Sinners, and Weapons, those are the three that I've had the best time in movie theaters, or I went out of my way to see in movie theaters.
This year?
This year, yeah. So, I mean, Weapons, obviously directed by Zach Kreger, who did Barbarian, which I thought was so amazing. I discovered that on HBO Max after it had already left theaters. And I was like, this is amazing. And,
so cool, yeah.
Started off his career as an actor, sketch comedy with The Whitest Kids You Know. And then, amazing. And I was like, this guy has a vision. And then you see Weapons, cheaply produced, or inexpensively produced, and amazing performances. And to your point, it creates its own lore. Same thing with Sinners. You're creating the rules, and Sinners, I'm missing
Ryan Coogler.
Ryan Coogler, already did Black Panther, all of these films. Sinners also got to reinvent the vampire genre in a way, but also put in themes of immigration, foreigners, like all of these things through the vampire lens, which I think is just like, wow, horror really is the most exciting genre probably to be working in today, to your point.
Absolutely. And I love horror. I love seeing horror, because horror, I think, is the genre that always gives me something new. When I go to see a movie, especially a horror movie, I just need to see something that's original, something new, and horror is giving that to people right now. And they're not really getting it elsewhere. I think, the superhero genre and the big blockbusters that all kind of felt the same, I think that diluted people's taste in cinema.
Yeah.
It diluted the audience's palate immensely, in addition to our phones and social media and TikTok and YouTube, which we, are grateful for.
Yeah.
But still, those things dilute, taste, I think, and palates for film, and for people who are consuming film. And maybe the palate got too diluted, where they just need something crazy and unique to really get them to the theater. And word of mouth is really important. But I think horror audiences are probably the most loyal. They will come out to theaters. It's not like everyone's seeing horror movies, but people are going to see horror movies. That audience is growing. It's booming. The action genre, the superhero genre, the sci-fi genre, those audiences are all kind of staying home. But when horror comes out, everyone's going, and they're getting really good word of mouth.
Fans of horror love watching horror. You get that dopamine release that you don't really get in any other kind of genre.
It's like if you like spicy food, and you're like, I'm going to a spicy food restaurant. You know what you're going to get, and you're going to be happy.
I handle spice well. Well, actually, one of the people I left out, I guess, one of the new kind of in the Freddy Krueger genre is Art the Clown from the Terrifier films. Yeah. Those are another whole, like a lot of like the mainstream audience still probably has not heard of Terrifier, but it took #1 at the box office, I think earlier this year or last year when they released the latest one.
That's the most impressive case of horror production independently in the last, I think, 20 years, because he made this The first two, he made it independently, tiny budget. First film made a couple million at the box office. They made another one. It made like $10 million at the box office. Then the third one made over $30 million at the box office. It was a huge hit. And it really is like he has complete control over it.
Outside the studio system, right?
Absolutely. Completely independently made and distributed. It's just a really unbelievable example of working outside the studio system and finding an audience. It's absolutely possible, but the Terrifier franchise is by far the most successful example that I can think of.
Yeah, it's comparable to Paranormal Activity and Blair Witch Project. 1999, then Paranormal, I think, was 2000, 2001. Two ideas, found footage style that was just kind of starting in its infancy and becomes mainstream because of this cult status, all word of mouth before social media exists. And they really popped in two of the most profitable movies to ever be made of all time. I mean, Paranormal cost $15,000 to $20,000 to produce, but then they put an extra $200,000 in post-production budget. Blair Witch, same thing, about $10,000 budget more in back end for post-production once it got picked up. But those movies generated immense sums, and I think there's something about that. Horror is something that can give us something new that everyone can connect to. I think because fear is such a powerful emotion that's something that draws people to horror.
So new ways to scare audiences. Like I remember seeing Blair Witch in the theaters, and there was such massive hype, and this is obviously before, the internet is what it is today, but, it was on, I believe, the cover of Newsweek at the time or something. It really was out of nowhere. And with so little, it managed to scare the living shit out of me. Like I remember going camping after I had seen that movie and being like the only one awake at like 2 a.m. and just hearing crackling and going, come on, you're an adult. There's no reason you should be scared right now, but you are. And it was so little. But to our points too, is that Blair Witch Project, I don't think they knew exactly what they had on their hands in terms of the runaway hit that it became. So then they spent so much time trying to figure out how to replicate it, or how can we make Blair Witch the next Nightmare on Elm Street? How do we then trade? And they've had a bunch of failed attempts because they're like, well, there's a Blair Witch universe. We now have a Blair Witch universe.
Yeah.
And that wasn't necessarily what it was ever intended to be. So you couldn't replicate that first feeling.
Well, found footage, I think, doesn't work for sequels, really. Yeah. Except, Paranormal Activity, they kind of found the secret sauce, but I can't think of another found footage franchise that works with its sequels.
It's Creep.
Okay, Creep's
because
good.
that's different.
Oh, Creeper Tape. That's on Shudder, right?
I'll explain why that works after you finish your point.
Because I was saying with Blair Witch, what else can you do? Just the same thing.
Yeah.
But Creep's a great example.
So I think with horror, especially if you're talking about franchising, the most important thing is you need your character. You need your all-time horror icon. You're talking about, you brought up all those 80s movies, all icons that survive for sequels. Mike Myers, Freddy Krueger. Creep is a found footage film with the same antagonist, the same creep, the same villain. And so that's why you're able to, I think, replicate and expand on what you've done before.
That's it, man.
But and that's why I think people resonate with Weapons so much, is we have a great horror icon like Gladys. People are going to dress up as Gladys for Halloween.
Oh, 100%. If you haven't seen Weapons, go check out Weapons immediately. But Aunt Gladys, they announced there's a prequel now.
Yeah.
They are fleshing out her story, and Zach Greger is on board for this, right? It's director approved. It's not the studio jamming it down his throat.
He'll probably write it, my assumption. Yeah. But I doubt he'll direct it, though.
No, I think he's,
full in on Resident Evil.
Has a very big schedule ahead. But I want to know more about Aunt Gladys. What's her story? She might have been alive for hundreds of years, and you have this perfect character, a visual character that you're like, oh yeah, of course I want to know her story.
And that's why the Black Phone 2 coming out.
Yeah. Grabber's back.
Grabber was such a great antagonist to and then killing.
And that's Ethan Hawke playing Grabber.
Yeah, and he's phenomenal. And it was one of our favorite horror films that year, and it was such a cool new villain. And we weren't sure, are they going to make another one? Because they killed him at the end.
Yes.
But Scott Derrickson figured it out, and the trailer and the concept looks great. This Freddy Krueger-esque villain now. The new Arctic environment in the winter, and this is an example of the Grabber could be, if the second film is as good as people are saying who've seen it at early screenings, the Grabber could be the next great slasher.
Well, that's true. And so the thing with the Grabber, there's the supernatural element to the Black Phone too. I mean, the first Black Phone, so that works. But there are examples where you don't need the horror icon. It's important, but it doesn't guarantee success. Sinister is a perfect example of, we have a great first film, Scott Derrickson as well, with Sinister, Ethan Hawke, Bagul, the great villain in that movie, and they set it up, we can have a franchise out of this, and they drop the ball of the second film. It's not very good. third film isn't very good and that franchise is dead. Same thing with Megan. Megan, the second film, did not come across well.
They took it. Well, they wanted to make Megan the hero all of a sudden.
They had the modern day Chucky.
And that's what happened with Don't Breathe.
Yes, Don't Breathe, same mistake.
Don't Breathe?
No.
Who's the actor who plays Quaritch in Avatar? Stephen Lang. He's a blind man, and a few criminals break into his home, and it turns out he's a movie monster. He's blind, but he's very dangerous, and now he's hunting them who've broken into his home. And then so he's the villain. He's the shark in the first film, and then Don't Breathe 2. They made him the hero and protector of a young girl, and it's like
nobody wants that.
He went from movie monster to hero. That makes no sense.
And I think studios are afraid to keep making their villains the villains, which is obviously we see too many of the movies. Like they're trying to let's do something fresh. Let's make our villain the anti-hero. You keep them the villain because I think Megan had the potential to literally be the next Chucky.
Yeah.
You could do 5 movies and people are going to show up to that movie. They had too big of a budget. They went like a Marvel action route. It looked interesting, but I didn't end up seeing it, and I'm glad I didn't because people didn't resonate with it. And I think this is a perfect example again of how you fail with your horror icon. But if you have a good horror icon like Art the Clown, you keep Art exactly who he is. You don't make Terrifier 2 and 3 with Art an anti-hero. You keep having him do fucked up shit. People will turn out. That's what they want to see.
I was watching old interviews with Wes Craven, who not only created Nightmare on Elm Street, he did the Scream franchise as well. So that's like 2 huge horror franchises coming out of one man. But when you listen to Wes Craven, Nightmare on Elm Street was never meant to be a universe. It was never meant to be multiple sequels. In his telling, it is a contained story. It wasn't proven at the time. It was about like this, like what happens in our nightmares? Can they actually kill you if something, and then it was a success. And so immediately New Line Cinema was like, okay, we think we have something. And New Line Cinema, not on its last legs, but they were just kind of chugging along. They weren't a big power player. And so then they're like, okay.
The house that Freddy built. That's
exactly.
What they called it, yeah.
So Nightmare on Elm Street 2, different director, different writer.
Wes wanted nothing to do with the sequel.
No, he was like, Godspeed. Yeah. There wasn't Bad Blood, but Godspeed, but this isn't my thing. And they didn't really have the lore kind of worked out. In fact,
the second one's not good.
Well, I rewatched the second one recently, and I did have a greater appreciation for it. Like, because it's campy in some ways, but it brings Freddy out into the real world when it's like, no, the rules are it's got to be in the dream.
Yeah.
And then on the third one, what is that? Dream Master? No, third one.
Wes came back for it. Yeah.
Well, and it got back to the lore of it, and it got back to Nancy with Heather.
She brought her. Yeah, they brought her back, and it got all the elements back.
It worked, but I think sometimes with the lore of these things, they're not figured out. And then once it's a success, they will go for it. Now, The Conjuring is a horror franchise. We just had its most recent film that I think worldwide is the biggest film that they've had in the Conjuring franchise.
It's $450 million. Huge hit.
Why do you think that is?
Well, first of all, I think those movies are good. I think the Conjuring movie has been consistent, and that's why fans come back, because it's been a consistent franchise. It's expanded, Annabelle, Insidious, they're all connected, but you have your 4 main...
Insidious isn't connected.
Is it not?
No, just James Wan's other...
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Another atomic monster movie. Thank you. But you have our main characters. We have the same 2 actors in the same 2 roles as Ed and Lorraine Warren coming back to solve really, really solid movies. The first one's really good. The most recent one, I think, is maybe my favorite one. I know it's kind of mixed for people, but I thought it was fantastically made. But we have a consistent horror franchise where every time you're going to the theater, it's going to be good, and it's good.
Brand reliability.
It's like a restaurant. You're going to come back to the restaurant if it's good. You're not going to come back if it's okay.
Yeah. So you're always going to get a decent meal.
Yeah.
It might not be the best meal you've ever had in your life, but a decent meal.
All 4 Conjuring movies are good, and one of the Annabelle movies is good. The first Nun movie is good, and then those spin-off sequels aren't very great, but even in the spin-offs, they've had some success. So then the brand is... Audiences like this. I can trust this brand, and I trust that if I pay money and go see The Conjuring in theaters, I'll get scared and I'll have a good time because they've earned that.
Too.
Yeah,
great name, The Conjuring, and also the haunted house
still works.
It still works, but it's kind of no one's really doing it besides The Conjuring anymore. Like it used to be booming in the 2000s, 2010s. Conjuring's like one of the main ones they're doing because we had so many remakes in the 2000s, like Amityville Horror.
Yeah,
but haunted houses and ghosts in homes, they're really the only one that's nailing it.
Yeah, I was thinking about the Saw franchise because that came around like 2004 or in that time frame, and I remember seeing that in the movie theater and going like, "Oh my God, this is really graphic. This is really graphic," and it kind of then got the term torture porn because they made multiple
Hostel followed up.
Yeah, then Hostel with Eli Roth, all of these things. And it really got very, very extreme. And then you saw the proliferation of that out into TV with American Horror Story and the Ryan Murphy Show. Not the first season, but after that. And it felt like there was, or it pushed the horror industry to an exhaustion almost that needed to reinvent itself to where we are now, where it is, you know, like you said, the Zach Cregers or the Sinners, you know, and it's making horror more elevated than torture porn. Now, Terrifier is a little porny in that sense.
It's like the ultimate torture.
But, I mean, I feel like that's a nice throwback that can be brought back.
Well, it combines the slasher with torture porn. So what happened in from 2000s until early 2010s, torture porn was just everywhere. And the genre got dumbed down to just be, let's make it graphic, let's make it bloody, let's watch people get dismembered, and the genre lost its values, and so that's where the highbrow horror came in with filmmakers like Jordan Peele, making Get Out and making it like really intelligent in terms of the story and the themes, and then that led to the last 10 years. But Art the Clown is an example of combining the slasher with the torture porn in a way that just perfectly works. And just the equation.
And torture porn will always have an audience.
Yeah.
The history of humanity will tell you people watch fucked up stuff on it.
Well, so we're
Terrifier 3's some of the most fucked up shit I've ever seen in my life.
No, I mean, there's a lot of stuff to do with organs and guts and all the good stuff you rely on in that kind of genre. We're in spooky season right now. I'm trying to rewatch horror films or trying to get in the spirit of Halloween. What are on your guys' agenda for what you're going to be watching personally?
So, I mean, every year when it comes to spooky season, I'll revisit a bunch of horror movies. We have some episodes coming out that we'll do Black Phone 2. We'll do Shelby Oaks. So we're super excited.
Explain to the audience what Shelby Oaks is, because I think that they're probably going to be hearing that name more and more.
It's coming out, yeah.
That's a horror film, but explain the pedigree of that.
So Chris Stuckman, he's been a YouTuber, movie reviewer for like 12 years. He's been doing it for a long time. He's built a really big, loyal fan base. A couple years ago, he decided to take a foray into filmmaking. He did it by starting I can't remember what crowd was. Indiegogo, a crowdfunding website to obviously fund movies. That's we do the same thing to fund our movies. And he had the biggest success ever for a film in terms of crowdfunding. He raised over $1 million, like
$1.4 million for
the
most ever for a narrative movie.
And so they started shooting production earlier this year. Mike Flanagan, the filmmaker, came on as an executive producer last year as well. So he gave in a few more funds as well as they'll build connections with Neon, who picked up for distribution last year before they even finished the film. In addition to picking up for distribution, Neon also invested more money into the film for more budget for extended shoots before they finished earlier this year. So it's just this really incredible story of this guy who just loves movies. He's got this great fan base and he wants to get into filmmaking, and it's really impressive to see what he's able to create. But all like the world of horror and horror lovers just all came together to help this guy out, which is really incredible.
And is this out in theaters now?
October 24th.
October 24th.
And what's even crazier is he got $1.4 million on his campaign, but he got 250,000 in 48 hours. So it just boomed right when he announced it. It was unbelievable.
He has a huge fan base on YouTube. He's got several million subscribers on YouTube alone. So he's had loyal fans for years, and those people turned out and they said, you know what, I want to help this guy. It's a really incredible story because I mean that's what we're trying to do too.
Well, it's interesting too. I mean, not to bring it back to Taylor Swift, but we're trying to get down. No, just thinking about like this weekend there was so much discourse around this album. Like, is it horrible? Because it's already successful. If you record sales, box office, already one of the biggest albums out there. But now people are like, this isn't the Taylor I know. These are horrible lyrics. When you're somebody like Chris Stuckman, you've been covering these films on your channel for so long. I wonder what the fear is of then releasing your idea out into the world and having to deal with the same discourse that you championed yourself. And as filmmakers yourself, does that ever affect your artistic process?
No, you have no control over it. And if you're worried about how people react to you, you should just stop that. You should never worry about how people think about you in any regard, especially when you're making art or writing a story. If it speaks to you and if you're passionate about it and if you feel that it has meaning to you to make this and you do get to do it, at the end of the day, that's all that matters. If people like it, they like it. If they don't like it, whatever. try to make another one. So I doubt that Stuckman's very concerned because he's got a movie coming out with Neon, the coolest distributor right now. I mean, I can't think of a bigger W than that. And if it does well, he's going to be able to make another one. So in a way, he already won. And if some people don't like it, whatever. That's movies.
Yeah.
I mean, some people hate the best movies ever made. There's going to be bad reactions.
Or also,
no matter what.
you have to let movies sit with you for a while.
Yeah.
You know, things that are not a hit at first then get legs over the course of a decade.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Stuckman's always been a really nice reviewer in terms of, you know, he might not love a part of a movie, but he still talks about the great parts of that movie.
Yeah.
And so he's always giving filmmakers and studios the benefit of doubt.
He's a champion in that sense.
Anthony and I are the same way. Obviously, you know, when we break down films, we're doing an hour and a half episodes sometimes. You know, Stuckman does about 10-minute episodes when he does a review. But Anthony and I go really in depth on films, analyzing from every standpoint. And we'll be, you know, glowing about most films most of the time. Sometimes we pick apart things and like are critical here and there. But at the end of the day, Anthony and I, we love film. And we understand from experience that it's hard as fuck to make a movie. Even a short film is so difficult.
I was trying to explain that to the audience, like over the years of like, even TV, even film, you don't know how much, even the fight to even get to the point where you're filming on day one, and then what a battle it is to film it, post-production, into release. I mean, it truly is one battle after another where you're like fighting from conception to release. And I don't think people understand how much work from so many people are involved for one finished product.
It's a war, and it takes a community. So, you know, I always see people breaking down or reviewing and bashing a filmmaker's movie, just talking crap about the filmmaker. But it's like hundreds and hundreds and sometimes thousands of people are working on these movies, especially these big blockbusters. You know, no one wants to make a bad movie. And at the end of the day, me and Anthony try to lift film up always.
Yeah, you guys are really positive. You know, not toxic positivity, but like you can tell you love it.
We love movies. Yeah, thanks. I mean, we talk shit about Morbius, but like we were like, oh, but they did this well. It was fun to talk about.
We do avoid watching certain. We're not going to do an episode on Madam Web.
Yeah, like we didn't see it. Like I'm not going to watch that.
I don't give a fuck about Madam Web.
Craftsmanship in Madam Web. We want to go on record.
Like that's not going to happen.
Notch.
You know what I mean? So we do because we love talking about old movies and great international films. So we don't think that people should just watch the new movie that comes out.
No, Well, watch the thing that this thing was inspired by.
Sure, yeah.
Like, you know, whatever gets you, you know, I was, once again, Taylor Swift, I was saying, if this album, there's a lot of influences in it. Now, if that can get kids to listen to a Pixies album or to a Weezer album, my God, that's amazing. Like, get people back to original source and see where this stuff comes from, because I think it'll blow kids' minds.
Yeah.
Same thing with horror films. I mean, I think you can revisit these things. Like, I rewatched Nightmare on Elm Street. And I know there is something of just there's a personal story in there for me of convincing my babysitter to let me watch it. But it's still like watching him hammer out the claws in those opening shots.
Oh, so good.
Scared as hell.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, immediately put me in this really creepy mindset, which is where we want to go. You were talking about production companies or distributors. I wanted to talk about, is it Blumhouse? Blumhouse. And you've got A24, right? And Blumhouse they did Megan. Mm-hmm. Are they the Conjuring?
No.
Blumhouse, but
that's Warner Brothers in Atomic Monster. Blumhouse has done Five Nights at Freddy's, Universal horror films of the last like 10 years.
They got Halloween back into the
game. They have their rights. They just bought the rights. Yeah,
they bought the rights to Halloween,
and they produced Get Out. That was their first huge horror hit.
Blumhouse did Get Out?
But no, they started with Paranormal Activity. So Jason Blum, who started Blumhouse. He's become one of the most successful producers in the last 20 years.
In fact, I think his book just came out this past week.
Oh, I'd love to read that then. He was working at, I believe, Universal, and he had seen Paranormal Activity. I believe the filmmaker sent it to find distribution, and Universal didn't want to pick it up. He desperately wanted to pick it up. He saw the vision of it, and so he left, started his own company, Blumhouse, and his first sale that he bought was Paranormal.
Oh, right out of the gate.
And he distributed it, and that earned over, I think, $200 million. And so that's how he built Blumhouse Pictures. And then from there, he bought He distributed Get Out, which was a massive hit for a small budget of $4 million. Also, Whiplash was one of his early films, but then he's become like one of the horror filmmaker producers, who's someone who respects horror directors and horror writers, and he's always trying to give audiences something new. And then a few years ago, he signed a deal with Universal. Blumhouse now works with Universal for distribution and production.
Wow. And then A24, that's a little more art house in terms of its horror releases. Like we had Bring Her Back recently, which you can stream on HBO Max. Talk to Me, all of Ari Aster films,
Hereditary,
Midsommar, Hereditary.
Eggers.
And I'm really fascinated because it seems like they are not solely dependent because they release so many films, but horror is a big part of A24's slate. Would you agree?
Always has been. I mean, if you look at their catalog, they've probably produced 50 horror movies.
And that's where I think they make their money because they also did Smashing Machine. And Smashing Machine did not have the opening weekend box office that I think they were hoping for. They have a lot of big swings out of A24.
Yeah, I respect them for that. They do produce a lot of 30 million-ish budget range films that sometimes hit, sometimes don't. Everything Ever All at Once was obviously, I think, their biggest movie yet.
Hereditary was huge when it came out.
Yeah.
A really big success for them. But also, even Eggers' early films, The Witch and Lighthouse, they made good money on small budgets. Under the Skin was an early horror film that they produced. So they were making, especially when they first started out in the 2010s, they were putting out films that were really unique and made by visionaries, and some films that the big studios probably didn't greenlight, which is why they ended up going to A24. And they started out as a distributor, and then once they earned enough money, they started producing films too.
Yeah.
And there's a horror franchise or a couple of movies that I think still are under talked about. First of all, I think It Follows is one of the better original.
Isn't there a sequel for It Follows?
Coming out soon,
right now.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really terrific independent horror film. I can't remember what studio that was.
That was A24.
Was that A24? Yeah, A24, It Follows. But I think Parker Finn's Smile franchise is absolutely outstanding.
And we're only
excellent.
2 films into that franchise.
I
That's
think
Universal?
It's Universal. Yeah. That first film was insanely profitable. That grossed, I think, $200 million-ish at the box office. That was, remember, they were marketing it back in 2022 when it was coming out at the Major League Baseball playoffs. They would have people in neon green shirts and smiling. And it was a great marketing campaign. And they were viral billboards. There was a discussion around it. The first film's really good. It's a really good idea. I love possession curse movies. That's very much like It Follows like a curse film. And then the second film, Parker expands it, makes it bigger than you could ever imagine. And he's a really talented filmmaker. And I think right now in the horror genre, obviously we have some auteurs like Robert Eggers is for sure an auteur. A filmmaker who has their own particular style that supersedes really the genre in general.
Who just had Dracula, which actually
Nosferatu,
which actually turned out to be a decent-sized hit, right?
Very successful.
Yeah.
90 million on $40 million
And
budget.
we're about to have Guillermo del Toro's version of Frankenstein.
But that will be Netflix. But yeah, that looks terrific as well. Yeah. But I think Parker Finn at the moment is the most mimicked commercial filmmaker in terms of not like the auteurs in their movies, but I think like studios who are greenlighting, low budget horror movies, Parker Finn's style, the way he moves the camera, the way he tells his story, the way he writes his characters, I think his creativity is the most copied in terms of the aesthetic and style of the filmmaking because he does very interesting things with the camera, moving it. How many times in the last 5 years have you seen an upside down camera shot?
Well,
Parker Finn.
And you think that originates?
Ari Aster did all that with Hereditary.
True. Okay,
and
true.
Also,
the miniatures,
but the flipped camera, but also it's like everybody's doing the blink transition where it's the same shot at night, then it's like the same shot at daytime.
Yeah.
I would say Parker, but also Ari Aster.
So them too. We'll say that. Yeah,
everybody's copying what Ari does because if you look at so many horror movies now, they're moving the camera like Ari. They're doing that transition shot of it's the same shot, but it cuts to a different time of day. He did all that in Hereditary, flipped camera, very in the crane camera moving in through interiors. But yeah, Parker followed up for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting because I don't think Ari Aster has had Smile was a very big box office success. And
Huge,
I don't think Ari Aster has had...
Hereditary was
that
huge,
big?
80 mil.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't think it was that big.
It was A24's biggest box office until Everything Ever All at Once came out.
Wow. Yeah. So because then he had Midsommar and then he had Beau is Afraid. And
Midsommar was a good profit
Midsommar was
too.
great.
It made like 40, 50
to me, daytime horror film or a horror film set in the day was just amazing. And I love when he described it that way because I was like, oh, I described Real Housewives of Salt Lake City like that as well, which these guys, I would never make.
I didn't know
so
that was
horror
a show.
film set during the day. Yeah, it's creepy, you guys. But then he's not chased that because he's doing his own thing with Beau is Afraid and Eddington. Would you consider Eddington a horror film in any sense?
Yeah, it's social horror.
Because they social horror elements.
I mean, the film, I think,
is horrifying because of the PTSD I suffered watching it.
Isn't that horror?
It depicted our fear.
During the Eddington is all about kind of the pandemic and what we went through, and there's a ridiculously to it, which also there were elements of that in the pandemic.
Yeah.
But I think it is social horror in a sense.
The fear you have of each other. That's what Eddington really hit.
Those are a little bit of the times that we live in.
Yeah.
Is that it's not Freddy Krueger as much anymore, but it's our neighbor. It's us, and I think that's the other, in the times that we live in now, or how do the times that we live in affect horror movies?
Although, I think that because the landscape of film has changed and what people want to see in movies has changed, they become way more socially attuned to, rather than in the 90s and 80s, it was just about like slashers and...
Well, it was the rise of suburbia too.
Yeah. But also like having really powerful social themes has become very constant and very strong within the horror genre.
You could argue Get Out was really a big catalyst to light that flame. Mm-hmm. But Ari with Hereditary, you're right. His career was really telling. But I think if we go back to Eddington and how that relates to this world, it's the fear of your neighbor, but it's like a fear that you're creating yourself. And I think what Ari was doing with that movie was, those are great points you both made about that. But then he's making the biggest fear of all is a fear we haven't realized yet of what's going on in our world that we're not looking at. And then it'll be too late to change. We'll be afraid of it once it happens.
Yeah, that movie's really about the battery park being built.
The data center.
I think that's going to be an interesting movie to see how it grows on audiences through the years.
I think it's going to age like fine wine.
That's what I'm curious about, because I think it will too.
I'm not sure, because in this day and age, because when we were growing up, there were cult classics, but they didn't have a number slapped on them. But now the Letterboxd score is so
the
important.
Tomatoes of it all, the Letterboxd.
And so we're at this point because there's so many movies to watch, and there's so many things. Every week there's 10 new things to watch. I think people are way less likely to revisit something, especially if it's got mixed reactions and low ratings. They're never going to watch that movie again.
Do they have a section of Letterboxd of, it's been 5 years, let me change my...
You can change your ratings. And, I think Letterboxd is fantastic because it has built a community of young film people who are discovering new films, and it's a great community. Rotten Tomatoes, IMDb, they're all great metric systems, but I think they've been slightly corrupted the last 5-10 years with review bombing on low end and high end at the same time. For me, I don't like to quantify my feelings about a movie right away. And it feels like whenever I go to the movies with people I know, or after an event or after a screening, people are like, oh, what would you give it out of 10? I'm like, I just saw it. Jesus Christ. And I understand that that's how a lot of people are. They immediately pull out their Letterboxd and leave a rating, which is fine. For me, though, I don't want to quantify the film because I need to sit on the movie. I need to experience, I love watching movies, but then sitting with that movie is a part of the experience with me. And if I immediately just dilute that experience by just putting a number on it, then I never think about it again. That, for me, ruins the entire point of making movies and cinema in general.
And I'll see a new film, for example, One Battle, and then immediately I got several messages, where would you rank it out of PTA's films? And I'm just like, I don't know. Jesus Christ. People want to have a number and a ranking immediately. And I think we've become addicted to the rating system.
Yeah.
And so, for example,
social media has pushed us.
It's like Yelp ratings. I'm not going to eat at a place that isn't a 4.5 or
because
higher.
there are so because there are so many options. People are so picky now. That's when you go on Netflix, it takes you 40 minutes to pick a movie to watch because there's so many options.
That's why we go to the video store.
Yeah, that's why we go to the video store.
I would love, Vidiots does exist if you are in California, but that experience was so, there's so much of everything. So how do we find anything?
Yeah. I went to an early screening of this film called Roofman that comes out this
Channing
weekend.
Tatum, right?
With Channing Tatum, and it was great. I loved it. And there was a Q&A with the director and producers afterward. And it was really amazing insights into the film. And I loved Eric Chen France, and it was awesome. And there were two people to the left of me, And right when the film ended, they pulled out their letterbox. And during the entire Q&A, we have the director and writer of the film, the people who made this movie. They spent several years of their lives putting this together so that audiences can enjoy it. And it was a beautiful film. And these two people were just scrolling through the letterbox ratings of Roofman. And during this Q&A, and I was just like, why is that so important?
Yeah.
We have the storyteller right here in front of us talking to us about the film that we saw for free early access 3 weeks before anyone else, and they were just so, all they cared about was the rate. What are people rating this movie right after seeing it?
They should. It should be like that thing when you. Some people have a breathalyzer on their phone, to let you in. They should do a breathalyzer on Letterboxd, but not with alcohol. Just like you've got it. You can't leave a review for 72 hours. You gotta sit.
That's funny. That's funny.
Great.
But hey, I mean, at the end of the day, people can do whatever they want,
exactly.
and there's nothing wrong with it. But it's like that's how you feel. It's how I feel. It's how a lot of people feel. It's like,
but it's great to feel something. It's great to even have an opinion about anything. I think that's the excitement. Is that we're sitting here, an hour almost has flown by, and you're like, oh God, I love being able to talk about something that people made, that like people put their hands on, that actually made an impression on me as a kid, like it does a lot of kids, where they're a fan of the horror genre for the rest of their lives. Yeah. As we start winding down here, I did, I was reminded about this when I was doing some research. Do you guys remember Universal's Dark Universe?
Yeah. Yes.
Will you explain to the audience, if you can remember, what Universal was trying to do?
We remember.
So Universal, Universal was built by their monster movies in the 30s and 40s. It's back then, studios, they weren't making different kinds of movies. Warner Brothers was making gangster movies. Universal was making horror monster movies. Like a studio would pick a type of film and then just make a bunch of them.
Can I explain real quick why?
Yeah.
Because they would build sets that were all these specific sets, like a horror movie set, and they reuse that in different horror movies. Like a monster movie, we can use the same set here, so they would stick to what they had on their lot.
Financial.
So the Dracula set would be used a bunch of times. That's exactly why. And so Universal was built on their monster movies, and so it makes sense in the era of the verses, where studios are making universes out of everything. Why not do the monsters again? I thought it was a great idea to try and build a universe around them in a cohesive way, just like what Marvel's been doing and DC's been doing in Star Wars. It seemed to make sense.
On paper, it's smart. You start with Tom Cruise in The Mummy, the biggest monster
at the time. That's where it started, because they actually made that movie. Yes. Tom Cruise did The Mummy.
So they had a slate of A-list actors for every role. They had Russell Crowe for Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. They had Johnny Depp for The Invisible Man. They had Javier Bardem for Dr. Frankenstein, and then Tom Cruise in The Mummy. And then
who was the Wolfman?
Wolfman was
after Benicio played the Wolfman in Wolfman, which was a bit of a disappointing film. I can't remember.
Maybe it was Javier who was the Wolfman.
I can't remember.
Someone.
But there is a cast photo of the Dark Universe cast with all of those big name actors.
Yes.
This is pre Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. This is pre all of that stuff. And then The Mummy comes out, and it's not the biggest hit for a Tom Cruise film. Is that what ends the Dark Universe?
So the movie wasn't a bomb. It actually made a decent amount of money. It made over $350 million. So it wasn't a huge flop, but it was not good. And at the end of the day, I think Universal made the right call of like, you know what? We got a little too ahead of ourselves. Let's scratch this whole thing. I think that they would have gone down the wrong path if they had kept making those movies. The Mummy was okay. I
just love that there's a cast photo for their entire universe. That all the biggest actors at that time are in there.
It's crazy,
and it just didn't go anywhere.
But now what they're doing is they're making these properties again, but they're not connected. So Lee Whannell's The Invisible Man
and Lee Whannell did Saw, right?
He wrote Saw and acts in it. He's the second guy with Carrie Elwes who's locked in the bathroom. So he's an actor, writer, and then he's been directing films. His first directing outing was Upgrade with Logan Marshall Green. So then he made The Invisible Man, which James and I think is really one of the most underrated horror films of the century. It's a really cool take on the classic story. And then he just did The Wolfman, but also The Mummy is just finished production. So they're doing the properties. They're just giving filmmakers freedom to do their own thing and not be connected, which I think, after almost 20 years of Marvel and DC with these overarching storylines, I think, for me at least, I don't want everything to have a connection to every movie I see in that IP or that franchise. So I think it will
that's
work
what it
better.
sometimes reeks of.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you're just trying to make IP work and you're trying to like Harry Potterize.
But this is, but I mean, this is not, it wasn't new for Universal. In the monster movies in the 40s and 30s and 50s, it was like
crossovers.
It was like Abbott and Costello meet the Wolfman, Frankenstein and Dracula. Like they would do crossovers. Like the universe building and IPs and intense amounts of sequels were nothing new. They were doing it way back then. So it was just like I think that people there's a gap of a couple of decades where sequels slowed down in the 60s and 70s, and then they ramped that back up thanks to Star Wars and Indiana Jones and those films. And then we got the huge sequelization in the 80s. But they were making those kinds of franchise sequels and universe building back in the day in the 40s.
Okay, the biggest question, saved it for last. So spooky season, where do you recommend people start with horror? And it doesn't need to be modern. It can be like where do we start if we're like, I want to start with horror. It's never been my favorite. I don't know why. What would you recommend to
That's
them?
interesting. I would probably pick something psychological mixed with some gore. I think a movie like Saw, which we talked about, is a really good starting point for horror because
But the first one,
the first Saw, that's a really cool freaking movie. It's highly original. So I think you start highly original, but you can also start with the classics. And I think going to like Halloween is, I think, just a perfect horror movie, and it's a perfect time of year to watch Halloween because it's a Halloween movie. Anything that's, I think, you stick to small scale, small budgets, small concepts to get into horror, and then you expand your palate. I think it's like food or like beer or whiskey or whatever. Like you don't like start liking beer, but you take it easy. Like
start with a whiskey sour.
You're like in your 20s, you drink High Lives, but then you expand into IPAs. So it's like I think start small in scope. Look to the movies that had huge successes and huge fan bases, like Saw or like Nightmare on Elm Street, like Halloween, and start with the greats in low concept stuff. Then expand.
If I was gonna pick a movie for someone new to horror to watch for their first one, I would pick Scream.
It's a good,
because that also introduces comedy as well.
Yes, it's an easy one to get into, and it's aged really well. A lot of the older films, younger people, they don't think it's aged well. Like whether it be the effects in The Exorcist or Freddy, with the stretched out arms, they call it cheesy.
That's a good point.
But like people like us, we love that about those films.
Yeah.
So I think Scream is something where it's a perfect film. And it's a great slasher,
and it's a commentary on the genre.
Exactly, and it's aged perfectly. So I think that's a great place to start.
That's amazing. How do we support you guys? I love you guys so much. I want to remind people the Raiders of the Lost podcast is their podcast on iTunes, Apple Music, Spotify, anybody that comes on here, we want to automatically give them 5 stars. And they also have a Patreon where they do exclusives. But how else can we support you guys?
We're so easy to find. Raiders of the Lost podcast. We're on every platform, Spotify, Apple, YouTube. We film everything, every video, every episode's a video episode.
And you guys, we're talking like high quality, and the edits are amazing. They do it all themselves.
Yeah,
we do it in 4K.
Yeah, 4K. We do 4 episodes a week. We do 2 movie news episodes where we're breaking down every half of the week what's going on in castings, new trailers, posters, whatever, movies in development. Then we'll stick to a topic for a new release or a movie that we love in the past, something topical like horror, and we film it all. We're big on Instagram. We're big on TikTok. We post a lot of great insights and clips breaking down what we're talking about with movies. So Instagram, Raiders of the Lost Podcast, TikTok, Raiders of the Lost Podcast. So easy to find. Just search us on Google anywhere.
We're everywhere.
Support us anywhere, and
and what's
you'll get
exciting,
sick of us because of the content.
We'll get to say we knew them when their film starts getting made. So we'll have to donate to their campaign when that happens again. And maybe one day I'm going to threaten to make them watch a Real Housewife episode to really show them what modern day
only a
horror
significant other.
Is there Real Housewives of Boston? Because I'd watch.
Not yet, but I think there's a rumor.
If there is, we'll watch that.
I would watch that
because we're Boston.
You got to
boys.
watch it because that's modern day.
Let's go to Revere Beach. Fucking she's from Roxbury.
James and Anthony, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks
for having us.